you. And, I mean, I don't think you needed other people to worship you. No answer to that I have heard makes sense to me. So I went, I know you, God, and I know that you would have explained it from the very beginning why you made this earth, because I don't think you made it to save people. I don't think I think that's part of it, but I don't think that was your core reason for making the earth. So I just started contemplating about the beginning. And I thought about Adam and Eve. Well, Adam first. He's in the garden, and he's all by himself. And God says, okay, I'm going to bring some animals, and I want you to name them. Okay, God always gives us things to do to teach us something greater. And he wants to show us stuff. So he brings all the animals before, and he could have named them, but he brought them to Adam, and he said, I want you to name them. And what did Adam discover?
There wasn't one like him.
Yes. And that was what God wanted him to get. You don't have a mate. And so I think in heaven, Jesus did not have a mate. And God said, and so what did God tell Adam? He said, I'm going to put you to sleep, and out of your side is going to come your bride. Okay, I think in heaven, God said, I'm going to put you to sleep on the cross, and out of your side is going to be birthed the church, and that's going to be your bride. And so he gave us this picture of Adam. All right, now I want you to look in, y'all look at me like I am crazy, but that's okay. It's brand new information, so I understand.
I'm tracking with you.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. So look at, I guess I want to go to 1 Corinthians 15.
We were in Genesis. No, we're not.
Oh, we're not in Genesis anymore, sorry. I just told y'all the story. I was going to read it, but I figured I could tell you as well. So you wouldn't get the King James Version. No, it was okay, look at 15:45.
1 Corinthians?
Yes, 1 Corinthians 15:45. Oh, actually, all right, y'all hold on there. I'm going to just read you one little thing in Romans 5 first. Romans 5, you can just write it down if you want to. Romans 5, what is that? 14? 14. And it's talking about, I might need to go back because it's right in the middle of a sentence. I'm going to go back to 12. When Adam sinned, sin entered the world. Adam's sin brought death, so death spread to everyone, for everyone sinned. Yes, people sinned even before the law was given, but it was not counted as sin because there was not yet any law to break. Still, everyone died from the time of Adam to the time of Moses, even those who did not disobey an explicit command as Adam did. Adam was the only one that had a command until the law. Now, Adam is a symbol, a representation of Christ who was yet to come. So he's a picture of Christ. So then how do you explain the fall? Okay, so God has this tree, and he says, out of all the trees, don't eat of this one. Here's the tree of life, but here's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and so I don't want you to eat of it because you will die. So he tells Eve about it, and they're both standing at the tree. Y'all notice that she just turns and hands it to him. He's right there, which Jesus is always with us, even in our sin. He doesn't make us not eat it. And so she has been looking at that tree because when you know it's a commandment, this is such a picture of what law does. It makes you want it. She had that whole garden to play in, and she just stood there and mesmerized by that one thing she couldn't have. Isn't that just like us? Just like us. So she just got, the devil comes along to tempt her and says, hey, doesn't it look good to eat? And she's like, yeah, I don't understand why we can't eat it. Because it's going to make you like God. And so, he deceived her into eating it. She eats it, and then she turns around and she hands it to Adam. Okay, Adam is not deceived. He knows. And so if he doesn't eat this, he's going to be forever separated from his bride. She'll be kicked out, and he'll still be in the garden. He chose to eat that, just like Jesus chose to become sin for us, that he would be brought back to his bride. So do you see the picture? So it says that's what we're fixing to read. And what did I tell y'all? 1 Corinthians. Yes. the scripture tells us the first man, Adam, became a living person, but the last Adam, that is Christ, is a life-giving spirit. What comes first is the natural body, then the spiritual body comes later. Adam, the first man, was made from dust, from the dust of the earth. Like Christ, the second man came from heaven. While Christ was the second man came from heaven. Earthly people are like the earthly man, and heavenly people are like the heavenly man. Just as we are now like the earthly man, we will someday be like the heavenly man. So, that's not the part where it says we're even. Okay, so now turn over to 1 Timothy 2. Where's Timothy? It left my Bible. It's gone. Timothy flew the coop. Oh, it's after, it's Titus. Okay, really, is it after Hebrews? I'm lost. Oh, thank you. It's in those T's. All those T's together. I found it. Okay, 13 and 14. For God made Adam first, and afterwards he made Eve, and it was not Adam who was deceived by Satan. Okay, so Adam was not deceived. The woman was deceived, and sin was the result. But women will be saved through childbearing, assuming they continue to live in faith, love, holiness, and modesty, which kind of goes along with what we talked about the first day about how a woman is, I mean, we are saved only if we bear Christ. So we can be saved in childbearing if we bear the right child. We got to bear Christ and not the devil. Okay. So does that? So if the wife is a picture of the church, then Jesus' bride, the church is a picture of the bride. So when you think, okay, God, so you made this whole earth to find a bride for your son. Period. That's what the whole thing was about. And you see that at the very beginning. You see that at his first miracle. It's a picture it's in a wedding, and there's these 6 clay pots. 6 is the number of man. We are clay vessels, and we are full of water. We're made of water. It says we're born first in water and then in spirit. So they're full of water. He pours that water out, and it becomes wine. That's transformation. They said that for these clay pots to make that transformation of water into blood, they had to be made of something that would take that kind of chemical change. And the guy that was building the Hoover Dam, God just brought that story to his mind. He went, I've got to find out what those clay pots were made of, because we've got to have something that will hold all this water back. And he researched what those clay pots were made of, because they had to go through that chemical change of water to wine. And that's how they made the Hoover Dam, to withhold all that water. Is that not amazing? So everything in the Bible, it actually happened. When it says that the Spirit hovered over the earth, that was a magnetic charge that hovered over it that made that canopy that crystallized. And so that when they said that the stars, they could hear the stars pipe through and the stars sang, it was like a crystal radio. How they piped the music. Stars are singing up there, because we are those dead people become stars. New kings become stars. Remember when Jesus was born, they saw a star. Every time a person is born, they get a star. Every time they die, the star falls. It's just, and I think that if we're saved, we stay up there. I don't know. But, those astrologers they knew this about the stars. That's why they knew if a new star is in the sky, it's a new king. And they saw this star and they went, wow, this star is bright. It's like no other star. Have you ever noticed that, in my book, my little children's book, that star was huge. I went, why did nobody see the star? But it wasn't. It was just an astronomical, something they saw through their lenses that was not there before and all of a sudden is, and they know they're looking for that star because that means a king is born. So they see that star. So everything in the natural reveals what God's doing in the spiritual. So when we look at storms and earthquakes, God's speaking. He is speaking through these earthquakes, and he is shaking the heavens, and he's shaking the earth. So, I mean, hopefully it's for a good thing. Hopefully he's changing our foundation and making sure that we're on, firm foundation. So everything's a picture. So when you start seeing things like that, then you start seeing things as, like, I was going to a ladies' retreat, and I love railroad graffiti. So when a railroad, they start going in front of me, I'm like, oh boy, I'll get to see all this artwork, even though, and I always try to figure out what they mean, even though they're never words. They're always symbolic, and they're always letters that never make sense. They don't have vowels. They don't, Well, all of a sudden, across this huge, and nothing was on any of the railroad cards except for this one, and it said, focus. I went, wow, got it, God. So, I knew that I was supposed to be spiritually in tune during this women's retreat, which was really interesting women's retreat. I was invited by a girl who's a friend of mine who's like 30, and everybody on the retreat was much younger than me, much, much, much younger than me. So it was like I was the, grandma. But it was okay because I got to sit down with each one of those women individually and have a one-on-one conversation, and it was a lot of fun, and I knew I was there for a reason, and, they seemed to be fine with me being there. Anyway, so that's how you can know that dreams, God speaks through dream language, because he's been speaking that way all through this book. Everything is a picture of something greater. Okay, I want y'all to look at something in Leviticus, Numbers, 35. So I had another question one time. I said, God, I know that you were the first fruit to rise from the dead, because your Bible says that. And so now I got to find, okay, hold on, let me just find this. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. So where did these people go that died in the Old Testament? Because I know they didn't go to purgatory. So, because I'm not a Catholic, and I hadn't been taught about that. So I know anything about it. I just heard of it. So I just knew they had to go somewhere. So I said that right before I went to bed. And I wake up the next morning, and I heard the audible voice of God in my head, just as loud and clear. The first thing that came out of my head was cities of refuge. And I went, what? What was that about, God? And he goes, what did you ask me before you went to bed? I said, well, I asked you where the righteous people went when they died in the Old Testament. He goes, that's the answer. So I went, okay. Well, I'd studied cities of refuge. So we're going to read about them, and I'll explain what it meant, because I'm telling you, I have learned there is not a question God will not answer you if you ask in faith. Just ask him. He will answer you. He wants to talk to us. He wants to show us his secrets. He wants to show us his mysteries. He's hidden them for us. If you had an Easter egg hunt for 2-year-olds, where would you put the eggs? Right out front where they can see it. If you're having an Easter egg hunt for a 15-year-old, are you going to set it on the table? He's going to go, Mom, you got to be kidding me. You're going to hide it, aren't you? So God hides his stuff from mature people, so they'll find it, so they'll look for it. So he loves to do that, because